Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast. My name is Chris Berry, and I'm going to be your host for today. Joining us, we have Joshua Schulman. Joshua, how are you doing
Hey,
today?
how you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great, enjoying my Saturday morning, and excited to go ahead and talk about some coaching businesses with you. So,
Oh, wonderful.
before we jump into specifics of what you've done inside of your business, can you just give everyone either listening or watching an understanding of what you coach people on?
Sure. I have some unique programs. They're all under this, as I say, proverbial umbrella of communication. So everything from public speaking and presentation skills to sales training, right? Pitch, present, and persuade. And then also business English. I have clients all over the world. So with English as a second language, having better command of that, which is really important. And not just idioms and, well, idioms are very, very important, right? And vocabulary, enhancing that, and definite articles and plurals and pronouns and prepositions. Native speakers can work on those things too. But also, I teach acting and voice and stand-up comedy, which is the ultimate of public speaking, and even chess and poker and all of these things, especially chess and poker, which I love. I often say, look, we go, oh my gosh, I didn't see that. And in speech, we go, I didn't mean to say that. So I have interesting formats. I speak at events. I go to conferences, of course. I have boot camps and workshops and seminars. But my bread and butter, man, day in and day out, I do 75 coaching sessions a week, one-on-one group classes online using Zoom and various different platforms, whether Teams or whatever because I work with a lot of companies and such, which they prefer. And that's what I do. And as I joke, my mama says, "You love what you do. You never work a day in your life, but you gotta feed your soul, right? Not just your wallet."
Yeah, that is true. So obviously, I know we've had a bit of conversations beforehand. You've been doing this for a while, and you have a massive breadth of experience, as you've been touched upon in many different facets. What was your transition into this in the very beginning? Is this something you've always just been passionate about? Communication, sales, like what got you into this in the very first place?
Yeah, and certainly the convergence of them all, because even as a young actor, my day job, I was in sales. I mean, I had waited tables, that's how I got my first agent actually. But I realized I want to find more kind of value with this presentation thing. And I got a nice review recently, and they said that I don't just turn out speakers, it's performers, because I think presentation is performance. And in sales, this worked well for me because I didn't want to be sitting there making phone calls all day, all day, all day. I went out there and I go find opportunities to speak in front of a few hundred people, or all kinds of scenarios, even 25. But then, of course, then it started building up, and people would come up and say, "Hey, here's my card. Can you send me the deck?" Or, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you further." And it became a clear way to build lead generation, and it became very valuable, the idea of it. So I refined that. And of course, with the speaking and all that, and then I started to really get under there like a mad scientist. How do we avoid the ums and uhs and likes, And then I started realizing a lot of people were struggling with uptalk and the difficulty where they're going up all the time. A lot of young people do that. This question inflection challenge that many people have. And so if we could have more consciousness in our thinking, I call it thoughtful speaking, not about being courteous, kind, considerate, but being full of thought, there might be something there. And as a coach, that became a real niche with all of these things. People had interest. They wanted to do this, then do this, then do this. I have over 200 modules that I've created of programs and coursework. And I just love it. Yeah. And so I got a lot of interesting folks that I work with too. Very disparate kind
Yeah.
of groupings from all ages, from young kids all the way to seniors. My oldest student is 90 years old.
Oh, that's awesome. So obviously coming from, early stage actor and then going into sales and kind of this whole flow, as you just mentioned there. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I always tell people because my entry into the coaching space was through sales, right? Being a salesperson.
Sure.
And from then, regardless or not, whether I stayed in that sales role, I just always explained to whether it be coaches, individuals as a whole, communication's everything. And so I believe we spoke on this on our last
Yeah.
call. It's just like it's the foundation of okay, being able to sell yourself or communicate your thoughts, ideas to other people to maybe become a client, to a significant other to say, oh yeah, go ahead and be with me,
Yeah.
to pupils, to whatever it is.
Or give a toast, or God forbid, a
Yeah.
eulogy, right? I have a series called Say a Few Words. I don't want this just
Yeah.
about how do we make money, but what when those moments when they say, would anyone like to say a few words? And you could hear a pin drop, Chris, right? And everybody's kind of avoiding eye contact. I think we develop responsibility to be good communicators. I often talk about there's no mediocrity in speech.
Yeah.
People are either really good at this or they're not. And if they're not, they don't want to do it anymore. And so they don't. And then they wonder, why don't I break through? Why don't I get more opportunities? We can't
Yeah.
just say, well, I'm an introvert. That's not me. I don't do that. This is not a natural ability anyway. I don't think
Mm,
it's a talent or an affinity. This is a skill set that I think anyone can cultivate and break down. Boom, boom, boom. And a lot of the elements, particularly from a communication standpoint, and I break this down even into modules and formats, whether it's the anxiety and nerves, Chris, getting rid of those, to eye contact and gestures, who we're looking at, and what do we do with our hands when we're speaking, to nonverbal communication and reading people more effectively. You can imagine I use some of those skill sets in poker for sure, right? Easily. And then extemporaneous speaking and humor, which means no notes. I think we need to learn, and people need to be more effective being able to talk and present with no notes or pieces of paper, because you lose your credibility. You
mm,
lose your authority with that. And even tailoring the types of speeches we have. So I really get in there, like, I mean, whether it's an informative speech or demonstrative, or whether it's a persuasive speech or even motivational or inspirational, which I think are different. There's kind of a push-pull component from that. When
mm,
people say, I want to be a motivational speaker, people hire me and say, that's what my goal is, to be the next Tony Robbins. I said, well, that's not a thing. You're going to be kind of like an actor looking for your next gig. But as a coach, that's my bread and butter, right? As a coach, you do this day in and day out. That's going to really help you facilitate opportunities, I promise you. And then people will say, almost every executive I work with has at one point said, Josh, come to our office in Seattle or New York or Atlanta, and can you do a training for my team? Don't have to mention it. They will bring it up themselves, because they would love that their team have this same language that we use to be better and more effective as communicators. Because most people who are good at what they do, they know what to say. They don't know how to say it. And then they wonder, why am I not getting this promotion? Why am I
mm,
not getting leadership? Why don't I start my own business? We've talked about that a little bit, right? Where I say, in the States here, health insurance is expensive. So people look for jobs that have salary and health insurance, right? Take me to your leader. I have clients around the world, they have other kinds of insurance circumstance. They know, right? Socialized medicine, what have you. They don't even know what I'm talking about. That we look for jobs that provide health care.
mm,
And so if you have your own business, and that's why I encourage entrepreneurship, I hope you make enough money, you'll pay for your own darn health insurance, right? So those concepts become important. And part of why I coach so much and teach is I want people to take notes. So, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, but I'm 57 years old, brother. I would love them to say, you know what? I'm not waiting until someone fires me at my job. I can start my own business, put out a shingle and say, you know what? I took notes for 30 years. I've got something to teach and explain, and people will pay you for that. So
mm,
that's kind of where all this kind of came from and what the driver was. And yes, I wanted more efficacy in my life of speech when I say that, because in sales, you don't get a pat on the back. You either close the deal or you don't. There's
yeah,
too many attaboys in our world today. And there's no more of this fake it till you make it, act as if. You can either do it or you can't. And if you can't, listen, confidence is the biggest question people ask me, Chris. Confidence is competence, that you can
mm,
do it and you can do it again and again and again. And my goal as a coach that people can replicate that and they can do it themselves, and that's sustainable. They'll make a living for the rest of their life. And they'll never have to worry. They really won't.
yeah, it is true. One of my favorite quotes about, because you have all these affirmations today of, I'm just going to look in the mirror and tell myself, you're confident, you're confident, you're confident. And I do believe that having a positive image of yourself, self-worth is important. But one of my favorite quotes is, you don't get confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror. You get confident by having a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. And that comes
Mm-hmm.
through action. And so many
Mm-hmm.
people think that just by looking in the mirror and saying, "Oh, I'm worthy. I'm that." Inside of your brain, you can maybe trick yourself for a little bit of time, but you're eventually going to come to it. Okay, if I'm sitting on the couch playing video games all day doing not okay, like you're not being a very productive individual. Then no wonder why you feel that way. So
Right.
that
And not
was
just, yeah, I
yeah.
love that. Not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. Right. Even in business, I work with a lot of startups and founders, right? And we have proof of concept. So, okay, this is a
Mm-hmm.
great idea. Show me the numbers. I want to know the fundamentals, the financials, how that works. I love the genesis of your story. It's very nice. I coach contestants occasionally on Shark Tank, and I love that. I don't work for ABC. I work with actual people who are presenting, and I mentioned I don't really care if they get on the show. I don't mean that disrespectfully to the show.
Mm-hmm.
I just mean I want them to be prepared for real seed round funding where
Of
they
course.
ask you direct questions, right? And how you
Mm-hmm.
can analyze and explain that. And yeah, can you engage me too and get me really enthralled, and I see the passion that you have about it, of course. And is it cool that you started this business by yourself in a garage or a kitchen table? Sure. But that's not why we're writing checks for cap raise.
Yep, it's true. And the other thing that came to my mind is you're saying that right there, but then even before is, if an individual learns how to properly communicate, not only does it assist them in their current role, in their current position, but they have taken their value in the marketplace. Because you even
Mm,
talked about one thing, and I do want to come back to the fact it's not only about money. There's so many other things. But
yeah,
if you're talking about, especially today, job security,
yeah,
people are worried. Oh no, I've been working in this long, and then they fire me, and then I'm stuck. If you're a
right,
great communicator, everyone would
right.
love to have you, because
Oh yeah.
regardless of wherever you are, that is a massive skill set that allows you to succeed much more and also learn much more, and all of these different facets. So to me, communication is the foundation of success in all areas of life, not just business,
And they just don't learn it, and
personal,
they don't teach it in law school, medical school,
of
MBA
course.
programs. And I, I joke about that because my own doctor, my own lawyer, actually, my own client. I mean,
Yeah.
my MBA clients
Uh,
are my clients of mine, so they've struggled
yeah.
with this because they didn't learn it in school.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
engineers I work with, this is one element. I work a lot with engineers and quants and real smart folks who, as I mentioned, know what to say but not how to say it. They say to me, Joshua, that guy in sales engineering doesn't even know what he's talking about, but he's making more than
Mm,
I am.
mm,
I said, so go do that. Oh, I'm not a salesperson. Do you want to? Don't identify yourself as what you're not a what, you're a whom. You are a
yep.
person. And you can cultivate all of these skills and put them like an athlete. We really respect and appreciate a utility player who can do a
Mm,
lot of things. And in
yep.
a company, I've been laid off a number of times, like anybody else caught in restructures, acquisitions, layoffs. But you know what? Oftentimes, when my department was let go, they often said to me, Josh, to each other, when they're looking at line items, they say, oh, wait, don't let that guy go. He's the one who speaks at our conferences. Oh, really? Oh, shoot. Okay. Well, then shift him over here or see if he'll relocate. Or
Mhm.
so, yeah, I want job security. I want people to have that sense. But people talk about, we say, oh, our jobs, it's like a family. We spend more time with the people we work. It's not a family. They will fire you in 2 seconds if it works for their bottom line. And you know what? Your average employee probably would quit in 2 seconds if they got a better offer. And that's a concern right now because with the generation gaps, which are bigger than ever, people kind of chase shiny things. And I work with
Mhm.
every generation thing. So I have deep, profound respect for each and every one of them because I think people become very tribal in many different ways. We see it in government, we see it in this and that, but I think people kind of identify with the people they know and understand. And that becomes problematic because that's not how the real world works.
Yeah, that is true. So coming back into your business, obviously communication
Yeah.
is the foundation of everything. As you've been going through teaching people communication in many different fields and ways over all of these years, what have been some of the favorite parts of your business that you've had? And then what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you've had in running your business?
I, I want people to take ownership of the skills that they learn. Like I use a lot of cool acronyms to help us remember stuff. Like even as you and I are talking right now, I teach this concept called UTL, use the lens. Talk to the lens so you're really engaging. A lot of people are working remote, right? Or hybrid or live, even if they're in a live scenario and talk to real people in a conference room. I promise you, even since COVID and even before, and it'll never go away, there's a laptop that the suite or executive, you want to make sure they're part of that, right? As opposed to looking at other screens or other monitors as people do that. And that's a challenge of different people to understand how we're going to use technologies now and shift. I'm doing a lot of work in VR in the metaverse right now. In fact, a little later, I have a class, an acting class on communication, and particularly how we use business to replicate. And you have to pitch 10, 10, 12 times. Uh, you know, humor, maybe some emotion, sincere and genuine inside. But some of my favorite stuff is unique things, like just a kid who's has a talent show at school and doesn't have any talents, and she didn't. And I said, "You're a really funny kid," and we created a stand-up comedy act, and she crushed it. Right? It was because I love teaching stand-up because stand-up is the ultimate of public speaking, but it's different than speech. And everybody should incorporate humor in different ways as we can. And former NFL football players, right, who didn't get the Tom Brady media treatment. But it's interesting anyway, though, because we've been having these fires, of course, in Southern California, and our internet and Wi-Fi has been very spotty this week with a lot of different issues
Mm,
and outages and such. So, but those happen. I back up to
sure.
my backup. I'll tell you, in '94 we had a huge earthquake,
Mm,
and the whole city shut down for a week. It was 7.2 earthquake.
wow.
I'm at 4 in the morning. I'm carrying neighbors out. My building, 2 units, 27, were moved out the next day. It was crazy.
Mm,
Well, now I have to tell you, I'm prepared with a go bag and all that. I'll bring my laptop. I'll get out of here. I'll have Wi-Fi because now we got really good satellite Wi-Fi and things typically can. And then you know what? 98% of my business by design is out. My coaching business is outside of my area. So I
That
was
is
talking
true.
about football players. So this guy's got the, a real estate company now, and he's, 248 pounds, 6'4", good looking guy. And they said, why don't you come and speak to us, our business group, about how professional athletics, and
Mhm.
and and business, how they coalesce. And like, right. So they're wonderful to
Yeah.
work with. I've got, and they tell their buddies. And so I love working with athletes and stuff. I've done that for a long time with different folks who
Yeah.
are on teams who have to do media training and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It was fun. A lot of diplomats, a lot of folks who, consulates, a lot of folks who, also struggling. They interact and work with folks in English, and they have to. But in anyway, I have a calendar board, and I have a legend, like a green dot means someone could make it that week. And so I have a clear space, and I'll fill it with someone else who wants to change the schedule that week, or a new client for a meeting, what
Mhm.
have you. If I have a green dot with a black dot in the middle, that tells me I can sell that slot. And so it's not that hard. You have a coaching, uh, then it's just in these, right? And as you go along, it's pretty comprehensive. A lot of those things, I know your question was um, the challenges and difficulties, but even this, even technology, right? I mean, that's why I do
Mhm.
live programs and workshops, for years. When COVID hit, I had already had hybrid, so I had to adapt. Then I moved everything online. I'm so sorry, Chris, with this, situation today.
No, you're all. I mean, it's not something that you can control. It's something that kind of is a bit outside of the stuff with you. So all good.
No, I know I'll have this issue in a little while when I'm doing the VR too. 'Cause I'll be on stage in virtual reality, and people are from all over the
True.
world on there, and I wouldn't be able to explain whatever.
Mm. Wanda, one
Go ahead,
thing
jump
that
in.
actually have you? I'm sure you probably have heard of it. Have you ever used Starlink though?
No, I haven't, and I know what it is and how it's being utilized. That might be interesting, something, to explore, if that might be worthwhile for me.
it it might obviously this is a temporary thing with an extraordinary event of what's going on with all the fires and everything. I
Yeah.
in summer of 2023 went ahead and wanted to travel all around Europe, but it wasn't as much of just kind of major cities. It was going to different parts a bit more remote in islands and wherever it was. And so the hard part was is I would go to some of these places and there just wouldn't be cell service or the Wi-Fi, even though it was there, it wouldn't be sufficient to go ahead and get a Zoom call. So I went ahead. I only had a duffel bag and a backpack, and I would literally, in majority of the space inside of these bags was my Starlink equipment. So I would go ahead and I'd plop it up wherever I was, and I would get super fast Wi-Fi. So
Wow.
anyway, it comes to mind because maybe even I
I
don't know
will.
how
This is
much
the
it's
first
going to be there.
time. Just this week, I've been dealing with the internet issues where they've
Yeah.
been spotty like this, and my clients, everybody's been very understandable. Like this, we
Yep.
just jump up. What we've done, which everybody appreciates, we just jump straight over to 5G telephonic call, which
Yep.
is what I did back in the day. By the way, 25 years ago, I was working with a Japanese company, and I would work Japanese executives on their proprietary, tech. So we had like dialing up, dial up internet, but they were still ahead of us, as you can imagine. Well,
Yep.
I would do 10-minute format programs with them, and it would stop start, of course. But then at the 10-minute, a bell would go off, and we'd switch to a telephonic call. So we made do
Mm.
with that before. And then, of course, we moved to
Yeah.
WebEx and Citrix, right? And Skype, you could recall, of course. And Zoom,
Yep.
for the most part, has been very stable. I mean, throughout the
Yep.
entire COVID, I was busy. I was a busy
Yep.
bee, 7 days a week. Now I do 6 days a week. Today, I do VR stuff I am working 7 days a week, but I'm not doing a full load of schedule on Saturdays anymore to try and, have more time with my family and friends and all that fun stuff we got to do in life.
Yep. Absolutely. So and I know that we've been in and out with different stuff, but essentially the
Sure.
question of what it started was the favorite part of owning your business, and you were talking about working with these different athletes, console people, whatever it is, and kind of it sounds like to
Regular
me
people. Mhm.
of just in general, regardless of wherever they are, taking people that have amazing skill sets in one area, yet they don't have the skill set of communication, and helping transform them by giving them this amazing tool of communication and then seeing that transformation on their end because of how important this one skill set of
Oh,
communication is.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to watch it manifest and them succeed is exciting, right? It's
Yeah.
enthralling as a coach, and that's
Yep.
what you hope that, they would all pursue and achieve. And anybody can really do that. So, that Nike ad is so popular. We joke about because not what is it, just do it. It's so popular, I think, Chris, because people don't do it. It's not because they
Mm-hmm.
can't do it. It's because they won't do it, and they know they should do it.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah, that is true. So touching upon, obviously, you just explained the favorite part. a lot of coaches, and I know that you're at a different stage than most coaches we have on the podcast, and maybe
Sure.
most that are going to go ahead and be listening to this. You've been doing this a while, you've achieved a lot of success, whether it be now or whether you would like to refer back to earlier stages of your business. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, for every coach, as they scale and build their business, because it's not a typical business model, we have, I call it classroom utilization. I have X amount of hours in the day, X amount of, when I was with a company for years called Berlitz, a language training company, the oldest language culture company in the world, 145 years. I was the director of one of our centers, and we had only 8 classrooms, right? So how many classrooms, how many hours in the day? Boom, boom, boom. Here too. Now I'm doing this, of course, online and myself. I've got trainers, but it's very hard to be able to scale. And I have to tell you, you have to kind of cross-reference that whether what you want to do, because it's, for me, it's very hard to hire trainers and find people who can do this. And I think everybody should be able to do public speaking, sales training, and business English. But my sales guys and gals stopped paying attention after fourth grade with their English skill sets. My English teachers that I've had and hired over the years maybe perhaps didn't have as much business acumen or sales experience. Perhaps public speaking folks want to be the next Tony Robbins and not really interested in the other elements. And they have to really cultivate that as they're growing up. So if I scaled it, I mean, growing through their business, if I scale it, what's going to happen? If you really think big picture, well, let's say if I had 500 trainers, Chris, I'd be on top of a nice ivory tower, and I'm just telling everybody what to do. What I won't be doing is coaching. And if I'm true to myself that I want to be a teacher, a coach, that's what I want to do, and I've created my own format for that, then I've got to recognize that there's going to be a scale limitation. That's why, unless we think outside the box, which I'm doing now, and I have been for years with VR and the metaverse. And my programs, there's over 200 modules I've created. People can go in. I have an auditorium. I have a building in the metaverse in Meta Horizon Worlds. Anybody can come check us out. It's there's an actual address that you go in, SCI 305 Golden Avenue, if you have a MetaQuest headset. And I have a building with an auditorium, and I have a comedy lounge, and I have conference rooms and offices and poker rooms and chess. And people can actually, people will be able to go in within the next few years, select which class they want and what language, and it will be me presenting and sharing the program and interacting with them using AI with my voice. So that is a scale, and that's extraordinary. I'm excited about that. But traditional scaling is something of a big challenge in coaching, and people need to think about what is it they're creating. I have my name on my business, Chris. This is not an exit. I'm not building this business so I can sell it so that I, what, to create another business, a coaching business? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I'm 57, but I hope to be doing this at 87. I won't be doing it every day, maybe, but I did the math. And if I do 2 or 3 days a week, I'll still make more than what my SEP IRA will yield in dividends.
Mm.
So people should really look at how they could use coaching as a sincere way that they can make a livelihood and control their livelihood. And if they're good in sales, they'll never have to worry about close and their close ratio and being able to provide for their families.
Yeah, that is true. And that's one of the biggest things I think that, as you mentioned, a lot of coaches, and it keeps coming back to the communication piece. I just feel it's so important. As a coach, you need to be able to effectively communicate your ideas. You need to inspire. You need to not only
Mm,
inspire in general, but inspire change, because that's obviously what coaching is, guiding someone from
sure.
where they are now to where they want to be. So it definitely makes sense. And especially as you begin to grow at scale, as you touched upon, one-on-one can get you far. And obviously you can charge higher fees, but you're only one person and you only have
Right.
24 hours in a day, and we got to sleep.
Absolutely.
We got to do other things. And so ultimately it's, yeah,
That's why I
I
do
agree.
groups. And I have
Exactly.
2 or 3 groups a day. And in those groups, I could have 20, 30 people in a class, and the price point is much different than in private coaching. But
Yep.
I work with people. Look, a lot of folks have tuition reimbursement with companies and they cover my programs. When people don't, I got a single mom with 3 kids that I'm working with, and I give her, a longer term rate for a shorter program if I could help her accommodate. I believe people should have access to professional coaching, and that's my ethos, and it's my business, and I can do whatever I want. And if I take a loss here or there, I don't mind. I've worked with companies that were very strict in policy about what they charge and how they charge, and they always want to be the most expensive that there is. People always talking to me about high ticket, and I appreciate that. And you don't want to devalue what you do, but there are a lot of really good people who need good coaching, and it's just
Mhm.
not accessible and affordable. And sometimes private coaching is really, well, I quite frankly, private is always going to be the most effective, right? Because if you work with a group in coaching, you have to go at the pace of the slowest student. And so at a given point, it's always going to be better when a student in the middle can interject And this is a good takeaway for your audience, by the way. I often tell people create a list of words. I call it your 25, where you have one of five things that come to mind, Chris: a comment, a thought, a feeling, opinion, or a memory. A comment, a thought, a feeling, opinion, or a memory. They'll always have something to be able to say. And then if they say it and they respond to something, you go, oh, wow. And then people are responsive. You go, what did I just say? How did I frame that? And then you can reconcile, catalog that. You don't have to reinvent and how you say terrific things about important stuff that you talk about every day with new people all the time.
Yeah, that is very true. So obviously, you have all these people that have come through. They're in this process of learning communication, or maybe they're just starting off.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not as much now because you have such a large audience. You have all these connections, but especially in the early stages, a lot of coaches are just not sure how, on the business side, as you kind of mentioned, in regards to scaling and growing, like, how do I actually get people in front of me? How do I generate leads? How do I do
Okay,
all
go,
these different
let's do
things?
that. Let's get into that.
Yeah.
Goals.
What
All right.
what
So you
would you do?
specifically. So I encourage folks. Most people starting a coaching business don't have the wherewithal, the funds, or the money just to go out and just leisurely try and build a book of business. You've got
Mm,
that. You have your side job, and then you have maybe one or two clients a week on some slots or times that you are available. And before you know it, you're going to build that 2 to 5, and you're going to be very goal oriented and minded. And by the next few months, right, you're going to build that up, and you're going to have 10. At a certain point, you're going to make commensurate to what you make in salary. It's at that point you have a real heart to heart with yourself and say, I have this. I got this. Not about, look, I appreciate Norman Vincent Peale and the power of positive thinking and what you were talking about, manifesting good thought. But you're like, if you're making what you were making in salary, you have to then pull the trigger and say, I'm quitting. I'm going to lose it. I'm getting rid of the day job and I'm building up my business and I'm going to explore how I can market that effectively. And I have some suggestions and things on how we could do that. But you immediately, and it's not just making videos and YouTube. I will tell you, a lot of people put all their kind of their eggs in that basket and it becomes problematic for them. Look at all the folks on TikTok right now. We're going to be out of work this week. Okay, it's going to be a real struggle. If you just like investment, you have to move it around for different stuff, different things. So once they make that money, which is comparative to what they're making in salary, boom, and then they will build on that, and they will build on that. And I've got that. When I mentioned I have that big calendar board, here I'm looking at it, January 2025, and I've got all of the schedule going on this month to the 31st. And underneath that is a word, Chris. It says goal, and there's a number next to it. And underneath it says the word actual. And I will write in that number on the 31st. And I promise you, and I have gone now month over month, year over year in 8 years with this particular entity. And I'm gonna hustle on that. And I'm gonna make sure I get there. Right. Today is the 18th, and I'm already almost at my plan. And I feel very blessed. I don't take that lightly. As I joke about poker, I don't believe in luck. There's probability, there's plausibility, and there's actuality. Luck is superstition. It's lazy math. But pattern I can get behind. So find your patterns, your rhythm, your process flow. Start with 1, 3, 5, build that up, and go big, go home. Have that goal number, a solid, significant number that's attainable. I teach this in time goal management about SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, reliable, timely, and you will get there. And if there's things that are impeding, you got to identify what they are and remove them, get them out of your way.
yeah, that's so true. And that's the hard part because, as we've touched upon very briefly, so many coaches are experts at what they do, yet they're not an expert when it comes to running the business. And that's some of the most important stuff of running the business, of having those goals, of having this, of having that, of pulling the trigger, not being afraid. And as you just touched upon,
And then,
uh,
wait, can I touch on that, what you just said?
for
Because
sure.
I think it's
Yes.
important. Be
Yes.
mean and lean. And I mean small. Do not start hiring all these experts in other areas. Learn how to build your first website. Learn how to do
Mm-hmm.
your bookkeeping and marketing. Learn how to manage social media and not just posting your breakfast, but how you're going to use things promotional and when and where and how they work. When I
Mm-hmm.
do a reel or a story on Instagram, boom, it's designed specifically for the 24-hour period to the time when my next event is. For instance, like on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn, I'm very active on that. That's a great way to network and connect with people. I have a talk show on there once a month covering interesting business communication concepts. We talked about conflict resolution a few months ago. Last month, we talked about the metaverse and VR. A lot of people have no idea what I'm talking about, which is going to be the internet 2.0. I mean, for gosh sakes, Zuckerberg changed Facebook from Facebook to Meta, and people are oblivious of what I'm discussing and talking about now, but they will as we're making all these shifts in how we're using technology and AI in remarkable ways. And it's going to change the kind of jobs and what they're doing. But one thing, Chris, coaching will always persevere. I'll tell you why. Because people are going to want to talk to a real person. And they're going to want to talk to a real person sometimes one on one. And so someone has to make a determination. If you want to be a coach, you're going to work with one-on-one. Can you make more money in other ways, in other facets? Possibly, perhaps. But if you really are dedicated and sincere about being a coach, and that's what drives you, and that's what gets you up every morning and gets you to sleep well at night, then you're going to find some tremendous solace. And I think that's important because that's what we all deserve, is this notion of that pursuit of happiness. It's not a constant.
Yeah, that is very true. And as we begin to go ahead and wrap up here in the next couple of minutes, I wanted to add on top of what you just said, because it is so true. So many coaches, they come in, and even because obviously, as you know, I help coaches grow, but my intention is not just, okay, let me just do it for you and you have no understanding of what it is, and then you're reliant on me. Honestly, most business owners are probably doing it different because, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to have them relying on me. So they keep coming back into their business. And don't get me wrong, like, it's good from a monetary perspective, but for me, I want to make sure I can empower coaches that I work with so that they can have an understanding. I'm not saying that they need to be an expert in web design, but I think it's important for you as the business owner to understand these different aspects, to understand how it works. And as you begin to grow your business, and let's say maybe later down the line, you hire a person, it's not like they're just ripping you off hand over fist
Correct.
because you have no clue what they're even talking about. And it's so sad because I see so many coaches that come to talk to us about maybe working with us have paid all these other companies that just do it for them, and they have zero clue what's going
Oh
on.
yeah. Oh,
And
same
that's
with
not the good
accounting.
way.
Same with
Yeah.
accounting. If you don't know the
Mm-hmm.
finances, how your business runs, and then at the end of the year when it's tax time and you just left it to someone else to do, you're responsible. You've
Yep.
got to figure out what that process is. Know your, we just had Q4, right? I just sent my quarterly
Mm-hmm.
checks on the 15th. That's a ritual for me. I go and I take it myself in the morning, early morning, as soon as the post office opens up, and I send it, my certified mail. I do it myself. I know exactly where I'm at. And this is Q4, right? So I know what I just did and what numbers I hit for the year. And
Yep.
that's a sense of pride and a sense of dignity. And this is something I want others to be able to have capacity, which most people do have capacity to do,
Mm-hmm.
and to take ownership and say, yeah, yeah, I did that. And it's not about standing, there's no there. You and I know a lot of successful people, brother. They don't get there and go, I've arrived. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's next?
Yep.
And the next can't just be about how you make your business at the hugest level. It's about what is also the most effective level too, because quality control is important. I don't want to hire 500 trainers if they can't really do it adequately or forget adequate, because I don't like mediocrity, right? I want it at a fantastic level.
Yep. That is true. One last question that
Yes,
I
sir.
would like to go ahead and ask you as we begin to just go ahead and wrap things up is, if you were to be speaking to Joshua, just getting started in his coaching business, knowing what you know now, what one piece of advice would you give to the old version of you?
I wish I knew more about Ikigai when I was young. It's Japanese. It means reason for being, Ikigai. And it means reason for being. And what that is essentially like a Venn diagram, Chris. You take something you love to do, four parts. You take something you love to do that you're very good at. Does the world need it? And can you get paid for it? That would be my blueprint. I would start with that. Now, you don't have to be very good. I mean, perfect. Listen, I'm not a grandmaster in chess, and I didn't win the world championship of poker. I'm very good at the games, but I can break it down and teach it really well. In fact, a lot of you look at basketball, look at some of the best coaches. I've talked about that recently about Pat Riley or Phil Jackson. They weren't necessarily the best ball players. So identify, right? I would have told myself, okay, this, and this, and give acting X amount of time, but I'm not trying to just like, oh, I hope I become a famous actor. Even my acting classes, when people take it, I ask them, what do you want to do with this? Oh, I want to be famous. I said, that's not a thing. I'm not a good coach for you. Or people say, I just need help for speech on Thursday, coach. Well, I'm not a band-aid coach. I want to help you cultivate a bona fide real skill set that you can use in your life. And that has value. And can you charge more for that? Yes, you can. But you're also going to want to work with a lot of people who can't afford you. I hope you want to work with people who necessarily can't afford you. Now, I know everybody's got, responsibilities and livelihoods and such, but everybody's got to find a way they can give back. And part of that is making programs, also some of your programs, accessible and affordable. And and that's just I think a personal ethos, and I think a lot of people should try that. It's going to give them a tremendous sense of dignity and a peace of mind too about doing this, and the pride of being someone's coach.
Yeah, that is very true. Well, Joshua, this has been awesome. Me and you could probably talk for hours and hours and hours about all these different things, and we didn't even touch chess. We didn't touch poker. We didn't touch a lot of different things. So,
I'll come back, Chris. I'll come back.
Yes, it was great chatting. I know that this probably will not be the last conversation that we have. For everybody that is either listening or watching and they're really resonated with your message and they want to get connected with you, whether that be through paying for one of your programs or checking out your stuff on social, whatever it looks like, what is the best way for them to go ahead and get involved in your world?
Okay, they can immediately connect with me on LinkedIn. It's not just for looking for jobs. Connect with me on there, not just follow, but connect with me. Reach out, write a note to me. Not everybody's going to do that. They should take advantage of it. Or go to my website, www.getcoachingfromsci.com. There's a contact page on there. Peruse the website. There's a little video where I explain about what I do and how I do it, all that fun stuff. Read the reviews and such, but connect with me on contact. And if you do that and you make that effort, I will give you a complimentary half-hour coaching session, a real class with real takeaways. Not a lot of people can take advantage of that. We'll see what happens on that. You can also find me on all socials, Facebook, Instagram, X, you name it. I'm around. I'm not posting my breakfast every day, but you should be able to find me and connect.
Okay, awesome. Well, once again, Joshua, this was awesome. I'm sure we'll go ahead and we'll talk here soon and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Chris. Bye-bye.
Of course. Absolutely. Bye-bye. Okay, awesome. Well, everyone, I hope that you were able to pull as much knowledge, value, and everything out of this call with Joshua as I did. Two of the biggest things. I mean, I could probably have a laundry list of things of different value points and such, but the number one thing I wanted to talk about as we had just gone back and forth with Joshua and myself of communication is the foundation of everything. And so if you are, and even for me, myself, I consider myself a pretty solid communicator. Yet at the same point, I'm constantly figuring out how can I become a better communicator? Because it's one of the foundational skills of everything. So that's number one that I would challenge all of you guys listening. How can you become a better communicator in all facets of life? So that's number one. And then the second thing that I want to touch upon is in the very beginning, I believe it was one of the first things Joshua said. He said, when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And that is so true. And another aspect that I want to touch upon is you could see Joshua, his passion that he had. You can tell that he loves communication. He loves discussing all these different things. And when you have that sort of passion and you can understand how to effectively communicate that passion, it's inspiring. And so ultimately, in the same way, part one, or I should say lesson one and lesson two are interconnected because I challenge you to improve your communication and also have it so that you love what you do. You have that passion and you're able to communicate that. Because when you do that, it inspires people to change. It inspires people to finally do the things that they've always wanted to do. And it makes a massive impact. And you're able to help more people, make more money. And in the end, everyone wins. So those are the two main things out of many that I could go on that I took away from this episode. If you did like this episode, make sure you go ahead and drop a like. If you'd like to see more episodes like this, make sure you subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast.